Welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim. Join hosts Dan Melnick and Qasim Masood as they explore big ideas, limitless possibilities, and engage with visionaries, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders who dare to dream big, get inspired, motivated, and find practical tips for personal growth. Think big, dream bigger, and ignite your potential.
All right. Welcome back, everybody. We guest today, Michael Fisher. Michael, thanks for being here. Really appreciate you coming on. And can you tell us, first of all, where you're calling in from and what you do for a living with Rotten?
Yeah. Hey, Matt. Thank you for having me. I am based in Los Angeles, and I'm the founder and CEO of Rotten. Rotten is built off of a love of 90s nostalgia, and we make sickeningly delicious candy with way less sugar. So right now, our two kind of hero products are original and sour gummy worms, which are all natural and made with 60% less sugar than the leading brand.
It's awesome, man. Yeah, obviously check out the website. Being a 90s kid myself, obviously love the design. Super cool. I love it. So, but yeah, I guess just tell me a little bit more about your general background and what got you interested, getting into the space with kind of traditional and like retro branded snacks, and what you kind of notice out there in the market that you're looking to do a little bit differently or better with this brand.
Yeah, definitely. So my background is in e-commerce and brand building, but in the elder care space. So very different than food, very different than candy, but I really wanted to take that experience into this new category. And so I set out wanting to build a very differentiated brand experience and universe. And that's really what we've done here with Rotten. We intentionally developed the brand to sit at the center of some of today's most exciting trends. So on the category side, both non-chocolate and sour candy are some of the best performing categories and are the most popular candies with both younger millennials and Gen Z customers. So we knew we wanted to build a product in that category, which is one of the fastest growing. We combine that with building a product that is better for you and meets what today's customers are looking for. So 73% of Americans today are looking to eat less sugar in their diets. And on top of that, this kind of no to less sugar non-chocolate category, grew about 16% year over year. So we really knew that we were building in the right category with the right product. And on top of that, we wanted to develop the brand to explode. So the Rotten brand, as I mentioned, is both, nostalgic for a lot of 80s and 90s references. And we're also riding, the momentum and demand created by Liquid Death, which is the fastest growing top 50 beverage. And this demand is really for edgier branding in the better for you space. I think for too long, the healthy, better for you options in the food and beverage category all really looked one way. They really appealed to a certain type of customer. And, like I said, 73% of Americans are looking to eat less sugar. So there's demand from so many different types of people for these products. And so we wanted to build a brand to attract someone different.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And you mentioned Liquid Death. I could definitely see some of the inspiration there, that kind of like, counterculture, kind of funny but edgy sort of branding. I could definitely see that from there, but it's so unique in its own right. I mean, I didn't think about it when I first saw it, but I could definitely see that as a point of inspiration now that you say it. Mm-hmm. So that's awesome. And I guess when you first got started with the brand, when you first brought it to market, what's your kind of go-to-market strategy as far as, where you were looking to sell this stuff? Were you looking to be more D2C forward with your e-commerce background? Were you looking to get more of a retail presence early on? I mean, if that's changed to, leading up to 2024 here, I'm just curious about that breakdown as we come up to the present day as well.
Yeah, great question. So we launched at the end of 2023. So we're, brand new to market kind of in general across all channels, but we did launch with more of a focus on D2C. And we did that because we really wanted to find our brand advocates and kind of, our diehard fans. And we developed a go-to-market strategy for that channel that revolved a lot around, influencers and product seeding, organic social, and building really a case study in D2C that we could then take to retail. Because, as much as I do think there's an opportunity for us to build a great D2C business, candy is a retail category, and it's a, impulse purchase, and it's a category that, people are accustomed to buying, a bag at a time when they either stop in at a convenience store or at a grocery store. And with direct to consumer, it's much more of selling a bulk pack. And so that goes against, people's behavior. And so long term, we knew we were going to be a retail brand. And we feel that D2C is a great way to, build a story and move into retail. And we're seeing a lot of success kind of early on for us in retail. So in January, we launched in Hy-Vee, which is a Midwest grocery chain. We're actually launching next month in Safeway in Northern California, which is very exciting. And then a really interesting launch that we had in retail was with Zoomies last month. So if you know Zoomies, yeah, it's a skate
I can totally
retailer.
see that. That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I think we're having fun with retail in the sense that we're taking advantage of the fact that we're in a category that is sold in almost every retail environment you can imagine. Walk into a FedEx, they're selling candy. Walk into a Best Buy, they're selling candy. Your Ace Hardware is selling candy. Your bar, your barber shop might be selling candy. And so we're in a category that can really exist anywhere. And that means that, our brand has a lot of potential to go into places that are really strong brand fits for us. One of which is Zoomies. And luckily we're seeing, success there with product moving off of shelf and getting reorders. So that's really exciting to see.
That's awesome. I love that. And I think it's a really important perspective where essentially, here in 2024, your e-commerce site with a product like this is essentially like your storefront, right? To get that like proof of concept to then go to other folks to pitch, whether it's investors, you're trying to get some venture back, or if you're trying to go to talk to retailers to get into store shelves. I think it's a really important to be omni-channel in general, but also, it can be really difficult to kind of get off the ground without an e-commerce presence to start unless you have existing connections in retail. So I know that's something just from doing the podcast that a lot of other CPG brands struggle with. So I definitely appreciate your perspective on that and kind of using that to, have those conversations and kind of, accelerate yourself into those places as well. So it's really interesting. And I suppose, in doing the D2C sales to start, obviously, having that a little bit more direct customer interaction, get a little bit more information about everybody who are your like recurring buyers, as you mentioned. What do you kind of find is your like, most recurring or like subscribing demographic, I suppose? Is it kind of, I can imagine what your target demographic being kind of like, 80s and 90s kids. Is anything kind of surprised you, I guess, about like any like demographics that have seemed to be recurring customers and maybe you weren't expecting?
Yeah, I think the funny thing about nostalgia is it often appeals to people who don't actually remember that time. And so we do see, ourselves appealing also to a younger customer. Our average customer is, that 16 to 35 range. So definitely on the younger side. I think the most interesting stat we've found, and probably the most exciting for us as a brand, is that 70% of our customers have never bought another Better For You candy brand before. And so what that means is we're bringing in this new customer to this healthier segment, which is, exactly what we set out to do and exactly what we saw as the gap in the market, was that more people are interested in buying a product like this. They're just not attracted to it because of how it looks, how the brand sounds, how it's positioned, and maybe even, how the product tastes. And so that's really what gets us excited and makes us feel like we're onto something, is that we're attracting that new customer into the category.
Yeah, I think it's definitely, it's almost proof, right? Like through branding, like with Death, like what you're doing with your brand, where I think everybody's trying to be a little bit healthier. I think a lot of people just don't feel any resonance, especially I feel like the younger generation doesn't feel a lot of resonance from these brands that are just like sunshine and rainbows, happy days, like healthier option, So I think this is actually a really unique way to, resonate with people who aren't generally messaged to or marketed to, with options like this. So it's really fascinating. It really is. I appreciate you sharing that. And I suppose as you've kind of gotten into these retail locations as well, you found anything interesting as far as, as you're getting onto these retailers, especially with like grocery stores? Zoomies is an interesting one. I'm sure that probably stands out in its own right in a place like that. But when you think about your more traditional retail through grocery stores and such, where do you kind of find the best, placement for you guys? Have you had a lot of those conversations? Have you done any testing through, any of your retail partners to say, like, we know, like, basically, if you were to go to another retailer now, like, would you go with the data, basically say, like, we know exactly where, like, our placement works best? Like, what does that kind of look like for your product?
Yeah, you're talking about like a placement in a particular store.
I suppose, yeah. I guess I'm just thinking more of like the grocery store side, like more like traditional retail, like you're talking about with. I know you said you were in a Midwest chain, and I can't remember the exact name you mentioned, but the one in Northern California as well. I guess like in those conversations, I know that can always be a little bit tricky to find out that data, but also like get that across to retail partners as well. So
yeah, good question. I think taking a higher level view as we think about like what channels and stores we want to go in, we see our brand being able to perform in more conventional grocery I think compared to maybe some of our competitors that are more well suited to perform in some of the natural channels, like you can think of Whole Foods, for example. And again, I think the reason we can perform well in a conventional channel is that, we again deliver on the better for you product, but we look like this crazy fun candy brand still. And so I think that's an interesting place for us to play. In terms of in-store placement, definitely getting off shelf is helpful. We're starting to play around more with store placements now. So we actually designed this really awesome, display shipper, which stands up on the floor, holds, a bunch of our product. And again, because our brand is so out there, it really allows us to design a shipper that is extremely eye-catching, which we're really excited about bringing into a store. I think it's going to stand out. I think it's going to draw people over. And so we're just now starting to roll those out to some partners. But, as I'm sure placement in retail stores is a science and an art and a business. So, it's both about going in store and building relationships with the teams there. And it's also, a lot of times requires promotional spend that's challenging for a small early brand. So we're playing around with it all, and we'll see as time goes.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a game you have to play with those relationships where it's almost seemingly like you have to make it work without being in an ideal situation before you can kind of get into those conversations to really push it and get the higher velocity there. And it's funny you mentioned, I wonder if something like this would even be more effective in a thing in like a Whole Foods or like a health food space, because content wise, it obviously fits because it's a lower sugar option people look for when they go to things like that. But like what you're doing is like a counter to the traditional messaging for like snacks that are similar to this. I feel like that antithesis is even more stark and maybe eye-catching in a place like Whole Foods, because everything is like kind of exactly the opposite of what you're trying to be a counter to. So I don't know, it's really interesting. It's just like, as you mentioned, I just see a ton of opportunity with this kind of branding, and like in and of itself what it is, like as a lower sugar option for a candy that everybody loves, is like sour worms or gummy worms. So it's really fascinating. It's really exciting. Even just like looking from the outside looking in, I see a ton of potential in like all kinds of different unique places like Zoomies or like even like a Spencer's, I could see, that's awesome. Yeah. No, I love that. Yeah. And then I guess one question I do always like to ask everybody that comes to the podcast, Michael, as I know I mentioned, if you could go back when this was still kind of in the idea phase, right before you brought it to market for the first time on the DDC side, I know is where you got your start. If you could give yourself any one piece of advice, if you could go back to that time, what do you think that piece of advice would be?
Yeah, I think my advice would be, just keep trying to lean into sharing more. So, I think that some founders are really good at this, and they're really good at sharing their process, sharing their thoughts, sharing wins, especially, sharing losses with people. And I think that helps everyone around you see the growth. And, all of our industries are so big. There's so many people who, devote so much of their time to this. Like there's an audience that's interested in what we all have to say and our process. And so I've met a ton of amazing people through posting on LinkedIn. It's something I need to do more of, wish I did more of. And so my advice just be to, lean more into that throughout the process of building.
Hey y'all, it's Dan Melnick, the CEO of Zing. And I wanted to share a special offer for all of our listeners. Right now, if you need software development services, we'll give you 2 weeks of a free trial. Do you need to update your website? Do you want to build a mobile app? Do you want to update something that you've been working on for a long time? We've worked in a high-level technologies like AI, machine learning, blockchain. So shoot me a text, 817-874-2208. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's fair enough. And I definitely see, a lot of snack brands, a lot of people in the CPG space in general, kind of taking this very, I don't know what you call it, I guess like hyper transparency almost, where like, CEOs of these brands are posting every day, like a day in the life of the CEO. They're just eating their breakfast, talking about like what they've done, like you said, their wins, their losses, what the factory looks like, things like that. I think there's a lot of resonance there, especially with your kind of target, like younger demographic that are super like, like cold advertising averse, the things they see online, like just can't wait to skip every ad that you see on every platform, right? So no, that's super interesting. I think that's really good advice. But again, I know it can be, it can be a lot, like trying to push out content on that side of things every day while you're trying to also run a business on the operative side and talking about your retail partners and having those conversations. So that perspective is really valuable. So I appreciate you sharing that. And Michael, I just want to give you an opportunity quickly here as well. For anybody listening that might be interested in maybe potentially partnering with you in a business sense, or just wants to see where they can find the product and try it for themselves, what's the best way to stay in touch with you all?
Yeah, so you can find us on Instagram at Eat Rotten. Our website is going to be eatrotten.com, and you can always shoot me an email personally at michael@eatrotten.com.
Awesome. Well, Michael, I just want to say thank you again for coming on, man. Your insights are super valuable to everybody that listens to the podcast, and just want to wish you the best of luck and continued success in everything you're doing, man. I think it's awesome. I think the branding is really unique, and it's definitely probably resonating with a lot of folks that probably aren't feeling, super, I guess, target. I mean, I don't know if anybody wants to feel targeted, but it's nice to know that, somebody has kind of common, sentiments with things like this when you're marketing. So really appreciate everything you're doing, man. And yeah, really looking forward to staying in touch as well.
Sweet. Thanks for having me on, Matt.
Yes, sir. Thanks for being here. Thanks, Michael. Thanks, everybody.